With Nigeria's food inflation currently standing at 22.95%, food security still being a major challenge in Nigeria, a high misery index, and of course, a soaring food prices. What exactly is going on? Where does this leave the Nigerian, the common Nigerian man? This and many more will we be discussing on Women's Series today. Welcome to Women's Series, where we capture developments and stories that impact women. Today, I have my guest with me, Mosumola Umoru, the founder and CEO of FarmShoppe. Let's go meet her. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today is a woman who is passionate about food, passionate about farming, the agribusiness, and of course, inclusive community development. I'm speaking today with pretty Miss Farmer, Mosumola Umoru. Thank you for joining us on the program today.
So
it's great to have you.
Thank you.
By the way, you look good.
Thank you.
And
so do you.
And this space looks really, really lovely.
Thank you.
And by the way, this is one of FarmShoppe's outlets. And did I forget to say she is the founder of FarmShoppe? I don't know where you've been getting your farm produce, but this definitely has to be the right place. So let's get right into the conversation. I watched one of your recent presentation where you said that at 27, you were already owing 27 million naira.
Do you have to go down memory lane?
Yes, I have to, because I mean, that like 1 million for each year that you have lived. And then you said that 3 years after then, people were like, there was a green light, basically. And then people were like, oh, I'm proud of you. You're doing well.
They always knew I would make it.
You always knew you would make it. I mean, looking back now and looking back to that time compared to now, how has the experience been?
You know, the thing about debt and a failed business is that when you're in that rut, it can be really painful. You almost think that that's the worst place you can be. It's a dead end. It could be a dead end. But I think that my resolve was to succeed. I've had that resolve from a very young age, and it didn't deter me. I just saw it as a stepping stone. Okay, this too will pass, right? If I can use a Christianese lingo, this too will pass. So let's do what will make it pass. The quicker it goes, the better, you know. So I kept carving new ways. But fast forward to date, which is over 15 years from that time. I'm so glad that I went through that.
As a farmer?
As an entrepreneur, as a woman, as a human being, that I actually went through that painful curve at a much younger age. I do not want to go bankrupt at this age. The odds are that many people don't recover from debt and bankruptcy, especially in this part of the world, and especially at this time when we're living in, things are a lot tougher. If I had gone bankrupt last year and there were no real businesses and the economy took a downward spiral like it did in the last 18 months, I'm not sure how many people will healthily recover from that. So I'm grateful that I did. It was painful, it was tough during the time, but somehow it has shaped even the woman and the entrepreneur I've become. It has helped me own my own core for resilience. I'm literally not afraid of anything.
I needed to ask that because if I had asked you why farming, I'm sure your question or your answer would be why not farming?
Absolutely.
Exactly. So I needed you to speak on the struggles initially and how you've been able to overcome. At least FarmShoppe did not just grow one day. It just did not sprout up one day and say, oh, we have this particular space. Exactly. So I needed to understand where you were coming from and then where we are now in terms of business. So given the high rates of insecurity in Nigeria, and then inflation skyrocketing every now and then, inflation standing at 18.17% or thereabouts. How has this shaped business currently? What's like the position? Have you been able to grow the business constantly?
So what has worked for me is the fact that I am able to reinvent myself and reinvent my business model. I'm not a one-size-fits-all individual. So if this is where we are, question is, how do we innovate? What can we do differently? And I've constantly learned to work and understanding the times. So in running my business, I understand the times and the seasons we're in. And that's a natural phenomenon for a farmer, right? So a farmer knows when it's rainy season, a farmer knows when it's dry season, a farmer knows when it's harvest time. We understand the fact that there is a time of abundance and then there can be glut, in our production. So that has helped me. So understanding the times and seasons that we're in business, understanding where I am as an individual, what my core strengths are, what the strength of our business is, and leveraging it per time is something that has shaped how we have run our operations and how I've generally run my life. I'm never afraid to make a turn, I'm never afraid to get to a bend and know that you have to stop or pause. I think many people are afraid of change. We talk about change, but the truth of the matter is that as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, the only constant thing really is change.
Even in life.
Generally. So if it's a season of glut or high production, what you would do in business is usually look at your price dynamics. So are you going to lower your price so that you can attract more buyers? Are we going to change a product offering and not sell it in a particular state? So would you take fruits, for example, and convert them to juices? Would you take grains and convert them to flour that you can mix with something else and create a new product? Would you go out of your way and reach a new target audience completely? Would we change our model from a B2B to a B2C, which is why we now have retail outlets, right? So before we were heavily focused on the B2Bs. So we were serving QSRs, we were serving hotels and restaurants, and small businesses that were in the food catering space. But today we've changed that narrative a bit, where we now have retail outlets and we do B2C, so direct end users, direct consumers, and so evolving, and that's what innovation is, right? Innovation is, how do you do something that you've always done in a better way? So we innovate every day. We innovate in our customer delivery service. We innovate in our product offering. We innovate in our production processes. We innovate, basically. That's how we've been able to stay in business and stay afloat, regardless of the challenges we face, especially with insecurity. Insecurity is a big factor for us today. I would say publicly that we've had to shut down one of our major operations, I don't have money to pay for a ransom. And I'm also not ready to die. So it's a trade-off between, can we continue running that operation and investing in that at that location?
I was going to ask that question in terms of you being a primary production person. Yes, exactly. So from the farm itself, I mean, how has it been managing security?
Tough. Early this year, we had to completely suspend operation in our expansion project in Oyo State. We have 750 hectares that we had acquired during the tough part of 2019 and 2020 in COVID. But it took a very negative turn towards the fall of last year, where in Igongon, because we're actually in Igongon, the 750 hectares we acquired is in Igongon, local government of Oyo State. And you may have heard of the crisis in Igongon.
Yes.
And the fact that there's a headsman clash with the community, with the Yoruba community, and Sunday Igboho trying to fight for his community, which ideally the citizens and community should be protected by the government and by the state, right? But now I can tell you for free that it's one of the toughest places to run a business. We have an association, and every week there's a murder, there's an attack. Someone is killed on his way from his farm, or staff are attacked on their way to the market. It's become unpleasant. It's taken the joy and the fun away from wanting to run our operations. So temporarily, we have stopped our investments in that location. We're slowing it down. We want to watch how things span out, because it's only when we're alive that we can run an operation, right? If I have to start paying for ransom on behalf of my staff or myself, then I weigh the pros and the cons. So for me, it's cheaper to take that step now and focus on our other arms of our business operations. And retail is doing it for us at the moment. So we're here to stay till we can move back to site. Yes. I mean, we have 1 or 2 other locations, thankfully. So that's helping us mitigate. And then within communities where we don't have operations and we do require products, we have a good amount of contract farmers we work with on the site as well. Yes.
I think that sounds interesting. The fact that you've been able to at least find a way, solution to...
Yeah, it's about taking a balance, weighing the options and taking the best possible decision per time. So, and that's something that as a business, as an individual, I'm not afraid of.
You sound so much like a true entrepreneur. I mean, it comes with the business. You just cannot slack. You cannot be too, you just have to keep it going, keep it moving. And that's really interesting to note. Over time, Nigerian government has emphasized on the backward integration to promote industrialization, employment, and also reduce the poverty rates. I mean, how has FarmShoppe aligned itself in terms of the backward integration?
So working with, so when you say backward integration or vertical integration, I'd like to put it for us, is and job creation and improvement of livelihoods of farmers at the farmstead level. For us, we are fully aligned. It's the core of our business model. So where we do not produce ourselves, we have contract farmers at rural community level. If you hear me speak about who I am and what I'm passionate about, which was your intro, I'm passionate about primary production, which is farming. I'm passionate about food, you know, which is the quality of produce we deliver to the consumers. And then I'm passionate about inclusive community development, which is where my farmers are, right? Who my farmers are, how they live, how they survive, the knowledge that I am able to share with them on an ongoing basis, and the tools we're able to expose them to, our capacity to offtake their produce after production. That's where contract farming comes in. So the produce that we don't grow, our fruits come from different farmsteads. Our primary focus is livestock and a bit of leafy green vegetables. So every other produce that we carry that is not from our stables is sought and we source them from other producers. And so for us, we're helping improve their livelihoods by offtaking what they produce. We're also helping improve their livelihoods by buying a reasonable market price from them. And so they reduce their own exposure to waste and loss, post-harvest loss, which is a big...
affects, quite a number of farmers now.
Absolutely. So the fact that we're able to offtake produce from other people helps minimize their own losses, helps improve their livelihoods, because their earning power is constant. So the thing a farmer does cannot happen to a fresh produce farmer is to have a bountiful harvest, and there is no off-taker. All right? So we're fully aligned with government agenda to increase job creation. I mean, we hire people on a daily basis for every arm of our operations, albeit some are even contract staff. So again, they earn, so for our processing, our packaging, some of our farm operations are managed by contract workers who come in on a need basis, right? So again, so we can also reduce our full overheads, because certain arms of our operation is not a day-to-day routine operation. At the retail end, yes. At the processing end, we even have, with COVID now, we're even working better with having production dates, you know, so not everybody's exposed to the risk and the challenges and the hazards at work, because people have to commute. So there's so many things that we have to put into consideration as we run our operations as well.
With Nigeria's current food inflation at 22.95%, I mean, that is a whole lot for a country that has land mass that can even allow youth or young people to also take part into this business. For someone that is into this business, I mean, you probably have like ideas to share as to how we can overcome this major problem, because it keeps rising by the day. It is not even going down. It's been on the rise since 2005 October, and it has not gone down at all. We've just seen like the upward spiral growth in food inflation. I mean, for someone that is into the business, could you share how we can, I mean, possible ways we can overcome this particular problem?
So for me, it goes down to planning, right? And it's not a peculiar challenge to agribusiness or agriculture. It's across the economy, right? Across all sectors. But if we come down to food, let's drill it down a bit. We are a nation of over 200 million in population. The nation sits currently over 85 million hectares of arable land, both aqua and dry land mass. 36 states across the federation, then the federal capital. There's certain things that are specific to each state. So each state has comparative advantage with one food crop or produce over another. Yeah. Now, what we haven't done right is do a synthesis between sectors and ensure that we do not take agriculture in isolation. You can't fix the problem of agribusiness or agriculture across the value chain in isolation. There is a correlation between agriculture and infrastructure. So if you're investing in infrastructure, it would impact on agriculture, because it means that farmers then have the ability to bring produce to the market under better condition. And that's why I'm excited about the real service, all right? Now, if you also begin to look at it from that standpoint, what people now need to begin to see are the opportunities along that chain, where if I do primary production, who is bringing my produce to market? So there's an investment proposition or opportunity along the logistics corridor, whether it's land, whether it's cargo by air freight, whether it's sea freight, whether it's rail, you understand? So there are opportunities there. But with the inflation index rising on a daily basis, right? What we need to begin to consider is how do we reduce the burden on production? Today, the biggest challenge and greatest hindrance to the success and efficiency of the agribusiness chain is security. At primary production level, government can no longer play lip service to the security challenge that we're fraught with as a nation. It has to be tackled. Otherwise, this index will increase. So if we think we currently have challenges, we have glorious days ahead if we don't fix this problem along the production chain. Farmers are beginning to get weary of going to their farms because then nobody is providing safety nets for us. So I run and shut down an operation because I can't cope. If I didn't have a fallback plan, it means I'll be out of business.
You'll definitely be at home, and then there will be problem. You'll be thinking.
You know, so you have personal overheads, you have livelihoods of your family. I have dependents. I have workers who are probably laid off. So there's so many things to consider. So for me, it's important that we begin to think about fixing the security challenge. We've been talking about infrastructure, the infrastructure deficit for the last 10, 30, 40, 50 years. When are we going to really see a rise in infrastructure investment that is at par with the needs of the citizenry, okay? And not necessarily spend heavily on some of this infrastructure. And I think that without wanting to sound like a party pooper, right? If we begin to benchmark our national budget on infrastructure alongside other countries, look, I'm sorry, we're overspending. We need to look into our investment outlay. What we spend on infrastructure, if you check with other countries, you ask yourself, how come we do not have more? You know, like I said, are you ready for an honest conversation?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, I
because
actually understand where you're coming from.
so we have a procurement system in Nigeria that is flawed. So you have to look into that as well. You know, we have a civil service. Look, trust me, Ayomide, you don't want to get me started.
This is
It's
a
deeper.
lot. It is a lot.
It's deeper.
And then when we don't even talk about finance again as a problem.
And then so what's the cost of financing our infrastructural development?
That's a problem.
We're borrowing, right? We're borrowing.
Keep borrowing.
We're borrowing. When you look at the national borrowing plan on an annual basis, it's rising so high that I am worried that in another 10, 15 years, I hope we will not have over-borrowed to the point where we will put... I would rest my case on that borrowing matter. Let's move.
Let's just move the conversation.
Because if we really want to fix the problem in Nigeria, it's a hydra-headed monster, and you have to deal with each tentacle. You have to deal with each tentacle. So we'll come back to the biggest challenge, which is the people of Nigeria. Who are we as a people? What are we concerned about? What do we pay our focus on? Where do our values, you know, where are our priorities as a people? You know, because it's very easy to say it's infrastructure deficit, but there's also a people challenge where everyone is thinking about me, myself, and I. It's my family, my children, Look.
It's a whole lot. I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, there's a lot of things.
And we need to
actually
start one step at a time.
In that
We've
space.
grown a palette for a lot of things that we don't produce. And inflation will never reduce if we
don't get it right.
If we depend on imports for so many things.
That's another challenge.
You know,
that's a big one. That's a big one. Importation is also a problem in the agri space.
We're importing inputs for agric, we're importing seeds, we're importing fertilizer to a certain degree. Thank God we have some fertilizer blends. We have new companies springing up, indigenous fertilizer companies, but we're still focused a lot on synthetic. So as good as it is for us to have all of these fertilizer companies spring up, so that maybe they will enhance our productivity for crop production at some level, is to also begin to think about the earth, the ecosystem where we're all operating, the food, our soil, this food source. Our food source is very critical because this directly impacts our health. So if we're eating foods that are produced with synthetic fertilizer and we're consuming that on a long-term basis, how does that affect our health? Look at when we had COVID-19, the pandemic hit and it was at its peak. Africa had been there'd been a forecast that people would die in their millions on the continent.
Yeah,
but guess what? We were the immunity capital of the world. Right. We did not die in our thousands. Rather, that happened to other climes, in other climes where their immunity was not as strong as ours. All right? And you trace the strength of our immunity back to our food source. Right. So we're heavily dependent on a more organic based food source in comparison with other climes where they're heavily dependent on processed food, semi-processed foods, and of course this inhibits their safety. So nutrition is a big component of our sustenance, all right? And we need to protect that. How do you protect that? We cannot heavily depend on synthetic fertilizer. We cannot heavily depend on synthetic pesticides and herbicides because all of these things somehow seep into the soil and they come up on the foods that we eat. And so you're saying cancers are on the rise, food source.
Everything boils back to
the food source. So how do we begin to make that food source stable? That food source can be stable if farmers do not have access to the right improved variety of seeds, quality of fertilizer, quality of manpower, if they're not safe as producers and they have to run away from their farmsteads. There's so many things we have to fix. And when you do that, so it's the interconnectedness between the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Finance at the core, because everyone then says, oh, we need
Everything boils
money,
down
money,
to
money.
finance. Yes.
So where do we get money? Where do we get capital at very reduced rates? Where do we build the capacity? How do we enhance the capacity of farmers to be able to understand what they need to do? How do we engage more young people who have the energy of youth and age and vibrancy of life to begin to work in production? And then we then take that out to begin to set up new industries where we begin, and it's already happening. So just in case you don't know, there's an army that's quietly building up. And this army, army of producers, army of resilient, dogged Nigerians who are working across the production and processing chains to ensure that indigenous food items are being converted into highly nutritious food options that can keep us safe. But for that to actually grow at an exponential rate to match with population demand is the need for us to keep everyone safe. So security is at the core of all of this. And economic stability as well is at the core of this. So there's still a lot of responsibility on the government part, but I will never absorb citizens of their responsibilities as well. Yes.
Yeah. So I think you've extensively explained this, broken down into pieces, shared it like actual shredding. But one key thing that I found quite interesting when I was preparing for this, I found out that according to FAO, statistics shows that we have 70% of women in the agriculture space, and most of these women are the rural women. How about we start integrating the urban woman into this space? I mean, we're running out of time. Can we just sum it up in like 1 minute?
It's a tough call. How do you get an urban? And many of them are doing it. So you have women at primary production level, but most of the farms are owned by women who are in the urban centers.
Yes.
So don't get it wrong. There are very few. There are a lot of women at rural levels, right? Yeah. But in terms of taking investment to scale, there are a lot of women like myself who are actually now beginning to take agribusiness as their line of operations and business and investment. And there's so many. I don't want to
go into details.
Names of people, yeah. But most of the produce that come to the cities these days are run out of farmsteads that are owned by women who have gone back. Yes, also you have women across the poultry value chain. Loads of women in Ikorodu who live in Lagos but have their farms in farm estates and settlements in Ikorodu. You have a lot of women in Ogun State as well. You have across the federation. But to incentivize them to invest better comes down to a lot of other factors. So cost of financing the operations, incentives around tax reliefs as well would be a good focal point. There's some available by government already, but we can never have too much. Finding special financing models and vehicles to help some of them take their businesses to scale is another reason why you do not hear. So many of the women who make juices, who sell snacks, healthy snacks, food options in Lagos, they're in the agri-value chain, all right? But they just have their niche where it best suits them. It will shock you that we have a few urban farms springing up here in Lagos and where they're selling leafy vegetables like kale, lettuce, bok choy, spinach, lettuce, cabbage, all sorts are being grown in urban farms in the cities these days. And they're being converted into green smoothies, dry powders, superfoods, for people. And we already have people who are doing dried fruits as well as healthy snack options. We all can't be in the rural settlements. Yeah. But it may also interest you that many people are also migrating. There's a development around urban-rural migration where people are now looking for safe spaces to live and a healthier environment. So many people are actually migrating out of Lagos into some of this rural, where we call rural, because cost of living in Lagos is also very high. So many people would rather just live in peri-urban settlements and
Still very much affordable.
Yes, and then come to Lagos once in a while to transact business.
And then move back.
And then go back. So that's happening. Yes,
that's smart.
I did that for 2.5 years.
That's smart.
I moved out of Lagos to Ogun State, and from Ogun I moved to Ile-Ife.
Oh wow!
Yes, I did that for about 2.5 years, and it was peaceful. I have to say to you, I could hear the birds chirp in the morning. I could take a 1-hour walk, you know, and not be afraid that I'll be kidnapped like we are now. But you know, it was peaceful. It was. I hope I can do it again sometime.
We have to see more of that. Thank you very much. It was a long chit chat, and I'm sure that people at home as well learned one or two things when it has to do with the agribusiness and then the agricultural value chain. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It was great having you, and thank you for accepting us into your space.
I'll do it over and over.
Thank you very much.
And a delight.
Yes, and that will be all for today's episode of the Women Series. Thank you for joining us. If you've got questions or you've got comments or you want to keep this conversation going, reach out to me at ayomide.oguntoye@proffered.com. Follow us on all our social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you want to read more on our news stories, log on to www.proffered.com to get more on that. And until next time, thank you for watching.